This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
Meryl Streep has gotten 175 awards for acting, and she feels like someday they're going to take it all away. And the most amazing thing to me is Albert Einstein, the man who literally rewrote how we think about physics. He thought he was faking it. He considered himself a fraud. So the rest of us are in pretty good company, I think, you know?
So you know how they say two heads are better than one? Well, today on the Courageous Podcast, we've gone crazy. We're going three heads are better than one. I know, blasphemy, just bonkers, right? And here we are. I have to admit, for the last, it feels like a decade. We've been studying, me and my guests have been studying the topic of self-talk. And it's crazy. Like when I think about the things that sometimes we say to ourselves that you would never say to another person, it was sort of like the beginning, at least for me, of this project that comes home October 28th. Finally, Headamentals comes live, and it's a book that helps readers crack their negative self-talk. Coming to a bookstore near you, and I'm super pumped because I got my fellow, I'm air quoting folks, fellow head coaches and co-authors of the book, Rhett and Suzy Burke, Dr. Suzy Burke. But Rhett, I actually want to start with you if you don't mind. I mean, because
Sure.
I think without you, there is no book. And I remember, gosh, I was on your show for Return on Courage, and it was one of the easiest hours. Like it was like a very easy convo. And then I think you and I stayed on for like another hour afterwards, if you remember this. And
I do.
It was like, we got to stay in touch. And life happened a little bit. Maybe it was 6 months later. And then I reached back out to be like, how you doing? What are you working on? And you had mentioned this self-talk idea before I ever opened up my loud mouth. So can you why don't you start by like, how long ago was it really? How did you come up with the idea? Where did it come from?
Look, your book was fascinating. So I had you on Power Lunch Live, and we had a great conversation. And because courage and accountability go hand in hand, and I think we hit it off with our conversation because I think we see the world in a lot of the same ways. And the idea came from a talk I was asked to give to a group of small business owners, and self-talk had come up a lot in my coaching practice, and it's something that I know is an issue, and I've always thought about it as something I could help entrepreneurs with. And it started out as self-talk, and I thought that's what that book might be. I know it's evolved, and we got a lot to talk about in those terms. But it started out just really pointing out the fact that self-talk is an issue for entrepreneurs and is an issue for everyone. And that's where it started. But, you and I hit it off on the topic, and, it took us down this rabbit hole of, probably 8 years now of this book sort of coming and finding itself. And it's gone through a lot of iterations, but it took us a while to get to where we are today. In 2 months, we're going to release this book, but I think it needed that. I think it needed us to sit on it and then work on it some more, and sit on it and work on it some more until we got to where we ended up, which I think is the right place and the right, and offering the right solutions to this problem.
Yeah. So I can't help but now look and be like, really, how long has it been? Because it hasn't been a decade, although COVID always makes it feel like that's like dog years for humans, right? So, I was actually on set in Las Vegas for Caesars Entertainment. So I was still in the advertising world. And I remember it was one of those things where I had the way production works, you scout, you do production for casting. And so I could have gone home, but instead it was like, and my wife's like, yeah, right. You went to Vegas. What did you really do? I'm like, no, I locked myself in the room. And I think what we were discussing, this is such an important topic that let's not get caught up in writing a book. Let's have it as a parable. Remember, at first it was like, this is such and so needed. And I think when I got it, it was 13,000 words. And you were very gracious and kind because I was like, hey, you know what you should do? You should do this. Or have you thought about that? And you're like, no, like write it in, like take a cut at it. And, and so I'm curious, number one, I think when I got it, you had called it the Battle of Self-Talk. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that was the original.
Yep. Yep.
The original
Right.
title. Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, what about the two yous? And it's like, hey, the only way to ever fully be yourself is to realize there's two of you in there. And I think we liked where we were going. I remember coming out of Vegas and that I felt like I know we weren't using the Monster and the Maverick yet. We might have been using the Monster, but I don't think we were using the Maverick. But
You were not.
there was another.
But you also remember we were at that time also thinking about the brain part of it, which is where Suzy comes in, and we had talked to your friend in the UK about the brain science behind it. We started talking to people about what's going on in the brain when you're doing that too. So when we had started going already, trying to make it, bring in that science part and bring in the story part and bring in, we had started thinking more broadly about it, I think, at that time too.
And let's admit, so Suzy, when I first heard of you coming in, how it was sort of posed to me is like, oh, Suzy's like, she's going to edit this, going to get it all tighten up. I didn't know you were Dr. Suzy Burke. Like nobody told me that. Would have been nice to have known. But I got to tell you, like I think it was very clear that although we had the anecdotal side, we were missing the science side. And, you kind of rolled up your sleeves and went to town. I'm curious first, why this book for you? What was it about it that was interesting to you?
Well, when I read the first draft that Rhett sent me, I thought you guys were really onto something, but the science was missing. There's a lot of science that helps explain the source of our monsters, as well as how to turn them into an asset rather than a liability. And as a social psychologist, over the years, I've seen monsters show up in boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies, in leaders of mid-sized companies that are struggling to grow, in startups where every decision is like a life or death thing. No matter what the setting, the same powerful forces at work. And it wasn't the market and it wasn't the competition. It's that voice that we have in our own heads, that monster that don't blow it, you're not ready, or if they lose faith in you. Those voices that, quite frankly, we all have. I have it myself. When I'm in a critical moment, I can hear that monster saying, not good enough. And I know how quickly self-doubt can hijack confidence. And that private conversation multiplies into team talk. And that's when it hit me. I'd been, as a coach, treating engagement and strategy and execution as if they were separate things, separate from leadership psychology. But the truth is, this book hits it on the head. Self-talk is the hidden operating system of leadership. If a leader's inner voice is filled with self-doubt, it leaks to everybody. And no amount of strategy will stick. Simple as that.
So again, you could immediately see how much better the book got when you came forward. And the way I try to describe our three-headed monster, it's like Rhett started this thing. I'm fairly decent on story, and Suzy's really brings the science into the into the mix here. Is there, for both of you, really, is there like one step back, big takeaway, or something you've learned by going through this journey, and or maybe a couple? And Suzy, I'm going to start with you, and then Rhett, I'll go to you.
I think this thing I learned more than anything is typically we think of our inner critics as trying to tear us down. And they really aren't. They're overzealous protectors trying to keep you safe from things that have happened. So if you got laughed at in school for speaking up, your brain filed that away. And when you're in a meeting and you think about raising your hand, same voices, don't do it, don't do it. If your first boss pounced on you every time you made a small mistake, your inner critic learned that imperfection is incompetence. And even years later, it still sounds the alarm. One mistake, and they'll see that you don't belong. So I think that the one thing is that I've learned is that exceptional leaders don't try to silence their inner critic. They learn how to work with it.
That's powerful stuff. You're reminding me, I've had Seth Godin on the show, and I was trying to make a joke because he's a New Yorker, and it's probably my own, monster getting me the best of me. I was saying, we're talking about Seinfeld, the famous episode of Shrinkage. So I was trying to explain what business is courageous. And I'm like, we're in the fear shrinkage business. And anyone who's seen Seinfeld knows the episode I'm talking about with shrinkage. And I'm like just trying to connect, and I'm like laughing. And in a very Seth way, he sort of like pontificated and was like, actually, he's like, I think you want to give fear gratitude. You actually want to balloon it, and you want to make it bigger, not be afraid of it, normalize it. We all have it. And Suzy, it's basically exactly what you said about the monster. It's like, we all have it. We all have it. It's like almost the best tool that you're like, oh, that's cool. Like my system's trying to keep me safe. Thank you, monster. But I object that, and I'm going to still move forward anyway. And if you never have that conversation, you never move beyond that conversation. That's why we're not growing, we're not changing, we're not pivoting. We're swirling inside our heads versus moving forward.
And as you said, I mean, everyone has it. Howard Schultz, 3-time CEO of Starbucks, said, anyone who makes it to the corner office, they think they don't belong there. They're not going to tell you that, but they think they don't. Meryl Streep has gotten 175 awards for acting, including 3 Academies, 4 Emmys, and 1,000 others. And she feels like someday they're going to take it all away. And the most amazing thing to me is Albert Einstein, the man who literally rewrote how we think about physics. He thought he was faking it. He considered himself a fraud. So the rest of us are in pretty good company, I think, All
right, Rhett, what about you? Is there like one big colossal takeaway for you?
I think the big takeaway is really now knowing that, and you guys know where what I'm going to say, is how much this impacts teams. When a leader has negative self-talk, that impacts how they show up. The impact on a team means loss in productivity. It means loss in effectiveness and innovation. And it impacts the culture of the organization. And I intuitively knew that, but now I'm convinced of it, and I know it. And we've seen it in our conversations with people. And Suzy and I saw it firsthand a couple of weeks ago with a client. And so now knowing the tools that we can use as coaches and advisors and now leaders, when we put this book out, that they will have the tools to be able to see that, recognize it, and then do something about it so that it doesn't impact others. And what's so strange to me is no one else has really talked about self-talk as in impacting, team performance and team dynamics.
For business results.
Yeah, we talk about culture all the time, but nobody has drawn that link. And so I think we're really onto something. But just to see that and be able to now know it and be able to talk about it and offer a solution to it, I think was the big revelation for me. And that's why it's been such a great time working with you guys. Although we're just like a family, we have our
squabbles.
But it's all in the effort of putting something out into the world that is going to really help people. And I think that's what we've landed on. And so I'd do that all over again just to get the same kind of the result that we got here. Because I do think that we have something that's going to help a lot of managers, a lot of leaders help their teams.
I think we've given leaders a playbook that actually works in the real world. Something they haven't had before.
I'm not sold that leaders are connecting productivity all the way back to like self-talk. That's one of my sort of aha moments was like, oh, wow. Like if you really want to move ahead, you have to understand your head. And it really is about understanding that the product of the team is productivity. And if you're slowing yourself down, if you're not clear in your mind, your very own monster is working against you. It's like doing what it can to slow you down. It doesn't feel that way when it's you, but that's what's happening. The other thing I really adored about our 3-headed, I was going to say monster, but I think that's the wrong term. Our 3-headed maverick, we'll call it, right? Was that we kind of all have seen different things from different arenas. Like, we've seen, each of us have been coaches for B2B, sometimes been B2C, sometimes it's been Fortune 500, sometimes it's been small, sometimes it's been global. And I wish I could remember the exact conversation where we finally put it together and finally had that chat where like, wait a minute, it doesn't matter like size of the company. It actually didn't matter like if the leader was what the gender was, what their race was. We're all navigating this monster. Like no one feels safe. No one feels safe from their own self-talk. And, like we said at the top, like we joked about being head coaches, but that's how critical is that? I worry about leaders right now going at it alone. I'm curious what you see in Rhett, like from leaders right now and their need for, I'm quoting again, the head coach.
Look, I think that what you're talking about is really compounded today. I think it's being a leader has always been tough, and there's always been stress, and there always been demands. But if you think about the conversations we're having in society, and if you're a leader and you're reading McKinsey saying 80% of white jobs are going to be wiped out, and you see people say if you're not using AI, your business is going to crumble, you're going to be irrelevant soon. I mean, we've got the added stresses on the economy. I'm not making a political statement, but the economy is what it is, and there are challenges there. There are always challenges there, but there's so many stresses today, and also the stress of being canceled, saying something wrong, saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, and there's so many things that we are stressed about and thinking about that. You're right. That monster can be hard and create that anxiety that and just compound it. So I think that's what I see a lot of, and I think a lot of people, to your question, feel alone, and they're feeling more alone than they've ever felt. I that's just what I'm feeling from my clients and talking to my clients about. I don't think I have any evidence to that, but I know the people and the conversations I'm having, and I think they feel a lot more alone, a lot more nervous about the future. And think about how that's showing up, with their teams. That anxiety, if the leader's feeling it, your people are feeling it. That's what I'm seeing. I think I'm guessing Suzy probably sees the same thing, and I'm sure you're seeing a lot of that too.
Absolutely. And I think, the higher you ascend in an organization, the more you have to lose, the more your monster is kind of trying to keep you safe. People at the top don't get any real feedback, so they are alone. People are afraid to give them the straight story. Actually, I was on a call today with a GC from a multi-billion-dollar corporation. She was just furious about something that had happened because people weren't telling her what was really going on. And she found out and she was embarrassed. So I think more than ever, people are worried about surviving, being able to lead effectively, losing their teams.
I think you guys know this.
Yeah.
I was down in Florida this week, had the opportunity to address, like, we'll say there's probably 300 C-suite from the restaurant business in the room. And it was a CrossFit forum. And it was like, well done to this group because they got it. They got the curation right. Like everyone knew was making decisions or not making decisions, but you know what I'm saying? Responsible for making decisions. We're in the room and, I actually started my keynote with we're living in a worry war, which we've talked about, right? We've talked about this. We're in a worry war right now. And, I don't think we've been in worry wars before. And the pandemic was worry war 1, which I don't think we ever won. And we slipped into worry war 2. And so now it's like we're coming off this, this isolation and infestation. And you both already said it's very lonely to be the leader. It's even more lonely, by the way, when you're dealing with remote work, right? Like, not so you're lonely. You're like, how many days are we in the office now? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? Like, well, you're stuck in your own office of your head, right? And so the worry war is very real. And I was saying, if worry war 1 was the pandemic, worry war 2 is pandemonium. It's like the cost of eggs. It's the death of DEI. It's the divided states of America. It's what is our, I said, like, we don't want to make this political. However, like what's Donald and Elon and like, what are they going to say next? And it's empathy erosion. It's remote work. It's transactional workforces. It's all of it all the time, all the above. And it's a swirl. And you can see why it's hard to be a leader. It's hard to be everyone, but like if you're responsible for being on the rudder and it's just you and your monster, there's a lot that your monster is worrying on. I liked when we landed on monster fuel, like your monster is fueling on, and I think we landed on 6 worries. So maybe Suzy, can you walk through a few of what your monster is?
Sure.
The first one is imposter syndrome, which interestingly impacts 71% of people in America. And if you're a high achiever, it's even higher. The rate is even higher. We have National Science Foundation, so we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day. 80% of them are negative, and they just circle and circle and circle. So that's a big problem. Self-handicapping is when you put conditions in place so that you're going to fail on purpose, so you don't feel ashamed by failing by accident. So it's like staying up overnight when you've got a big presentation the next day, or not practicing because you're just too busy, and then the day comes along and you flop. Confirmation bias, which is believing what you've always believed and not being open to new ideas. Experiential avoidance. If something you've been bitten by a spider, you avoid it. If you've had a situation where you get in a fight with someone at work, for instance, you avoid going to meetings with them. You just turn the other way when you see them coming in the hall. And overthinking, which I think everybody really has to deal with, just this ruminating and going around and around and around in your head to no effect, to no good effect.
All right, so we've got imposter syndrome, we've got self-handicapping, we've got confirmation bias, we've got overthinking, we've got
experiential avoidance,
and
the amygdala hijack, which is my favorite, actually. Messages come into your brain through the brainstem, which is the base of your skull. They go first through the amygdala, this almond-shaped thing in the middle of your brain, but that's where emotions happen. And if there's something happens that has a strong emotional effect, it never gets to your frontal cortex where you can process it. So, I had a terrifying experience when I was a young kid. My sister did something awful to me. 1,000 years later, it's still there someplace because it was such a strong emotional event. And the amygdala hijack just happens when something reminds you, it triggers you from something that happened years ago that just had a big impact on your feeling of safety and security.
That's never easy to share, like a personal moment in the spirit of courage. I think I'd love Rhett. I want to hear yours as well. I'll go first just to give you a minute.
Okay.
For me, I think there's been times where as a leader in past companies where I suffered from confirmation bias. Like I would just surround myself with enough people that I knew that they weren't yes men or yes women, but I knew them well enough to know that they would probably agree with my point of view. And it's like, wow, like looking back at that, definitely an error. And I love some of the case studies we talk about in the book. Reed Hastings from Netflix comes to mind. I don't want to give anything away in the book, but just the way he goes about building his teams and making sure that there's like checkpoints along the way.
Right.
It's just not your point of view. That's probably the biggest one. One that isn't mine, and then Rhett, I'm coming to you. I can't believe that there's a 6 billion person club called imposter syndrome. Like that's how big the club is if you look at the numbers. 6 billion people, right? And by the way, that's assuming you're stretching, right? Like that's assuming you put yourself in a position to like, OMG, I can't do this. Am I in the right seat? I can't believe it. And I loved, Suzy, how you said, Einstein and Meryl Streep, they're like waiting for someone to call them out, right? Like if they're feeling this, we all are feeling this, but yet when it's yours, for some reason, the monster feels more intensified.
The interesting thing is every time you talk to someone about it, talk about the book, they say, yeah, I need this book. That happens to me. It's so pervasive. Rhett, over to you.
Well, that was a good segue, but you both set it up just beautifully for when you asked me that question. This book to me comes down to this. It comes down to your relationship with that monster, right? And this is what this book is about. It's about how you let that conversation go, and whatever the conversation is, and it's about keeping that conversation, like you kind of illustrated a few minutes ago, Ryan. Like I'll listen to you. And I may or may not take that advice. And I think we all have that. And my answer to you is I've learned to listen. And for a long time, I called it my gut because I don't think I had the right context for what it was. But it was that monster. And it's the conversation I was having. I remember when this really came up, I was probably 28 or 29, and it was about going in the Peace Corps. And I was just starting to hit a stride at Clear Channel Communications. I was already managing a station, and I was, we were on our way to the white picket fence, sort of American dream kind of thing, right? The house, the 2 cars, but I went to that Peace Corps recruiting meeting for some reason, and I don't know why I did it, but there was something nagging me that said, you don't want to, and this time I think the voice was positive. You don't want to regret not doing something that you thought about doing that you'd always maybe wanted to do, but maybe didn't have the courage to do, right? And that voice kept saying, what do you have to lose? Why are you chickening out on this? Why aren't you? And so learning to listen, take the advice or not take the advice, and I ended up taking the advice because I felt like I needed to do that. And every time that voice comes up, sometimes it's negative, sometimes I don't listen to it, but I've learned that it's an important voice, and that having that good relationship with it, that we can have this dialogue, and I can make that dialogue more positive most often than negative. I've learned to frame it. And I think we're probably going to talk about our method here in a second a little bit, or maybe we're going to hold that off and tease people with it. I don't know. But, the learning to listen to it and having a constructive conversation is so critical to what this book really, the essence of what this book is about. And for me, that's learning to listen and have a better conversation with that boy. It has changed my life.
I feel like we continue to pull back the onion the more we went into the topic. And one of my big ahas was, oh my gosh, this is a self-talk book or a self-listen book. I don't know if you guys remember that conversation.
Yeah.
But it's it, right? When is it time to listen and when is it time to not listen? Right? And again, you're irrelevant to your
Or
team.
push back on, or even better, push back on that. Well, make it give you more of an answer. Okay, why shouldn't I do that? Or why am I not qualified? Make it, don't just listen, flat out listen, like you said, but having it do more. I like pushing it a little bit.
But I think that goes into the 3C model, right?
Totally. Well, I was going to say, and Suzy, I'd love for you to walk us through, but we've talked a lot about the monster. I kind of teased earlier that we were close on hey, there's the 2 U's, which obviously we've landed on. Headamentals is the title, but yeah, it's not just one of you. There's 2 of you in there. It's the monster and then what we call the maverick, right? And so, can you, Suzy, maybe talk a little bit about? Okay, so we all know the monster. We know what the monster's trying to do, which is keep us safe or slow us down or tell us how small we are or tell us how unqualified we are. But there is another voice in there. There's another. You are hearing it from the maverick. So what's the maverick like?
Maverick is the one that says, wait a minute, is that true? Or is that just some
That's
negative
your sister
experience?
told, that's something your sister told you 20 years, 50 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And the maverick is the one that says, wait a minute, you haven't done it yet, but you can learn. And just go for it. Have the courage to give something a try. Because the thing that's holding you back isn't real. It's a message from long ago that is no longer relevant to you. So tell your monster to shut up.
Yeah. No, not shut up, right? Because I think we all agree, hey, thank you, monster, for trying to keep us safe. I think it's reframing it.
You're exactly right.
Right. Yeah. But I have to say, one of the things you should be aware, folks, of the book is I find it's a book and it has workbook tendencies in there as well. You have to be willing to do the work on yourself. And it's weird to admit this, but maybe this is what comes when you're in a 3-headed, relationship as we were here. Maybe because we have been working on this for so long, the last time that the first time I had printed it out and spiral bound it, I promised myself I would go through it as if I was a reader. I was okay, the Ryan Berman that helped write this is now out. And now if I was going to receive this, and as I started going into the exercises, and again, if I'm listening to this, I'm no, I'm not trying to sell you. This is my version of the truth is there was shit I learned about myself on like where I was self-handicapping. And like, if the whole intent of the book is to like just get to the truest version of yourself, like the realist, like don't BS yourself, because the monster is trying to convince you of something that you don't really want to be convinced of. It's actually like prying on the places. Then it's
Brian, but where and why too, right? Also, why you were self-handicapping. Because until you know the why, you can't really fix it.
I feel like I'm not really worried about imposter syndrome anywhere. I'm very like, I have the clarity to know why for me and what my why is. There's still other stuff, right? That's come up.
No, the why is the source of the message. Where's that message coming from? Is once you can, that's the confronted stage, right? Of our 3C. That understand.
So, I don't want to give it all away, but I do think like the book itself, by the way, this is not my way of like holding us back, because I think we should talk about the 3Cs. So the way the book breaks down, it's a 4-part. There's the problem, there's the process, there's the practice, and then there's something that we're calling the plutonium. And so the problem is, this is not a new framework for books. It's the self-talk, it's monster, it's the saboteurs, it's the monster fuel. I think we've talked about those. Then it's like, what do you do about it? The best way I could describe the process, it's something we're calling our 3C method, is it's almost like, and I'm a poker player, maybe this was the biggest part of me, that's like, if you can't spot the sucker, you are the sucker. Like, I feel like until you do the work, like if you don't know the rules of poker, you're going to get crushed at poker. It's the same thing. It's like, if you don't know the rules of your brain's going to crush you. And so we have this 3C method. I don't know which one you want to take it, but who wants to jump in and own it?
Look, it's catch, confront, change. Let's put it out there, right? And there's either there are tools in each one of those things and exercises and things to work on that help you, like you said, learn the rules of your brain, number one, so that you see. And I'll stop after catch, and maybe each one of us can take a C, but like catching it is, listening to that voice and understanding when it's having a negative influence in your life and running the day and running you, right? And being able to catch it and understand, yep, I'm doing that. And that's happening. I see it, I hear it, I feel it, and being able to be able to stop it. Stop, or not stop it, but stop and then reframe.
And I think part of catching is we talk about the different ways that you can catch it, right? Because there are signals that happen when you're starting to listen to your monster that are very loud and clear that if you know to look for them, you'll find them. The next step is to confront. You don't accept that thought that you're not good enough or whatever it was. You challenge it. You say, is what I'm thinking true? Or is that just a tape from a long time ago? What's my monster trying to protect me from? That simple pause shines a light on the distortion. And then Ryan?
I'm not done with the confront yet. I will.
Okay.
But to me, the third C is the change. Again, to me, what I like is, what do you need most? Like, to actually start shifting and pivoting into that change phase. I love part of the book we talked about pronouns, like LeBron James. The way he made it less personal was being like LeBron James. He actually pronouned it out. I was like, LeBron James doesn't do this. LeBron James doesn't do that. And the amount of times, but if I was like, well, Ryan Berman has to do this, it actually makes it less scary, less emotional. And as you probably know the data better than me, but like, there are tools and tricks in the book that help you, again, spot when self-talk is showing up in your life. Again, once you spot it, once you catch it, then are you going to suppress it or address it, which is the confront component. And you're putting yourself on a path for change. I think we all even said in the book, like, look, the 3Cs, it's easy to say it. It's easy to read it. It's hard to practice. And that's sort of part 3. And
more of the habit of using this method to change your outcomes is really is important.
So I want to give
Marshall Goldsmith would say, it's simple, but it's not easy, right?
I want to give Page 2 some love, because that's our partner on the publishing side. They helped us really make this a book. I also, the image that we have for Headamentals is it's a cracked egg. And I think, again, as we've gone on this journey, we've learned and we've challenged each other and we've tested hey, is this going to be useful to leaders? I love that we landed on the egg because it really represents cracking self-talk. One of the hardest decisions I think we had was like, I think our first subhead was defeating self-talk. And we're like, well, you really don't. Like, you can crack it, but we're fragile. It's going to be there. That's your roommate for life. It's not going anywhere. It's just understanding how to crack it. Be like, okay, I'm on to you. I know what you're doing. I feel like I picked up so much time because we've had these conversations on who I am and how I move forward. And I also want to give you guys some love because, if I get caught on a concept, I'm hard to knock off, and, my love of words. But I do love that we've landed on Headamentals, because the thing I'm most looking forward to is those simulations, is going out to companies and like posing up these 10 Headamentals. And it's like serving up this choose your own adventure Headamental. And it's like, you were going for this job, and then that someone else in your company who's a little political and is kind of talking smack about you, and your monster is now taking over your brain. So I like the idea that Headamentals has a life of its own beyond the book. That's like, hey, let's serve up a Headamental for you right now. Let's see how you're going to respond to this simulation, which is really what the practice is. There's simulations. There's plenty to do in the book as well. And then, just to take us home, Rhett, you had talked about what I called the plutonium, but it's this idea that self-talk, it really does impact team talk. I don't think any of us ever saw this as a self-help book. We saw it as a leadership business book, but really that means it's not a self-help book. It's a team help book. Can you share a little bit on that side?
Yeah, look, I think we wrote this book because we all work for and help leaders make their lives better, right? And make their work lives better and make their lives better. And so I think that's what we were really passionate about, as coaches and people who help leaders improve. I think that's why we ended up going down this road, and plutonium, the last section of the book really deals with the concept of team talk and how you're showing up, how you show up as a leader really does impact your team. And so all I can say is that I'm really proud of the tools and the wrecking and actually having a little courage, because I remember some conversations where we thought, wow, this is going to be a sticky subject. Like giving this presentation in corporate and handing somebody in corporate this book, and they're going to say, oh, so you think I have a problem? I'm damaged goods, or I'm not good, or I've got these, I've got these issues. But I think it took a little courage for us to include this, because this could be a little sticky, but it's important. And I think we showed a little courage in putting it in there and facing that some companies may not want to bring it in because they're going to think, oh, I'm going to tell my whole team that they've got self-talk problems, right?
But we normalize it and put them in the context of Albert Einstein and
Yeah, no,
100%.
100%.
Schultz, and yeah.
100%. But I do think it is a tough issue, but it's an issue that's impacting businesses and their success. And so I think we felt like we had to put it in there. So I looked at this on that, and I think it takes some courage for you as a leader who you're watching this podcast to pick this book up and read it, and then share this with your team and work on this with your team. I think that will take a lot of courage, but I think you will see the change and the results from doing that. And so that's what I would say. That's how I would leave it.
All right, Suzy, what do you hope is like the main takeaway folks take from the book?
But they realize their monsters aren't villains. They're just overprotected bodyguards with outdated playbooks. And I think, they're just trying to alert you to your flaws before anyone else can see them. When you meet fear with curiosity, you trade shame for strength. That's where real leadership begins. So next time their monsters show up, you shouldn't push it away. You should get curious, lead with intention, and watch how fast the teams will follow them. That's what I hope they take away.
One thing you said to me, Suzy, which has become my big takeaway, is that your brain is programmable and you're the programmer. I love that. And think for the listener, one, if you've come this far and you're still listening, obviously this topic is of interest. I've learned more about my head and the way I make decisions from going on this journey. And, that's sort of one of the extra perks, right, of writing a book. And by the way, the amount of fear I've had on this book is not small. You both know this. I'm so glad we've gotten through it. And it's like, if we could just help one leader better understand their head, so they can move ahead and with their teams. I mean, that is a total victory for us. Headamentals.com. If you're interested in the book, you know where to find the three of us. Also, I want to say this is like a really hard podcast for me to do because usually I just want to stay in my lane and I'm the one asking the questions, but there's so much love for this topic and this baby we're about to put in the world. I hope you've enjoyed it. A little bit different take on it. Any final thoughts, final words? Rhett, what do you got?
I just think this is going to help a lot of people. I'm excited about that. I look forward to the conversations with readers. And I'm very, very, very happy I was able to do this with you guys. I can't think of a better team of people and just better humans to do this with. So much love to you guys. And I know, we're going to have a lot more time together as we put this out into the world. And that's just, I'm excited for that. And to your point, Ryan, one person, if it changes one person's life, that's a win. And that's what I'm so thrilled that we got this out.
To me, there's no doubt that it's going to change lives. It already has with our early readers, right?
Yeah.
And we've gotten great feedback from our early readers who are saying, we should have had this 20 years ago.
All right. 3 head coaches signing off, folks.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.